So in the last lecture, we added our own middleware, which is a logging middleware outputting something whenever we dispatch an action. Now this is nice and it allows us to get some insights into our store, but only if we dispatched an action. Now it would be more useful if we could always look into the store. Now in the debugging section, we learned about the React Devtools. There we can have a look at all the components, the component tree, and the state of each of that. And for the provider, for example, we get the store, but there we only see the utility functions. We don't really see what's inside the store. So this isn't that great. Now, there are ways to work around that. If we click on the counter component, for example, we see the current value of the counter prop. But still, it's difficult if we have to navigate to a component which gets a certain slice of the state just to see that slice. Would be nicer to be able to look at the full store and even see the actions which were dispatched, maybe even rewind. Well, for that, there are special developer tools we can install. If you Google for Redux Devtools, you'll find two results. The second one, the Redux Devtools extension, or to be precise, the third one, the Redux Devtools in the Chrome Web Store, that's an interesting thing. You should install this extension to Chrome, and it will give you a nice plugin you can use to look into your store. Now you can read more instructions on that second result, the Redux Devtools extension GitHub repository. Here you find more instructions about how to install and set it up. In the end, it's super simple. You just need to download that extension and install it, and you're pretty much done. One more step is required though. But I will of course also walk you through the required steps. Now important, don't have a look at the first result here. These are also DevTools which you can implement programmatically into your app. We want to have that browser extension though. So there we see the steps we need to apply. Now I assume you already installed the DevTools. If you then open them via your developer tools, there should be a Redux option now. You might have to switch back to the console first. You should see the Redux DevTools open up here on the right. Now it's saying no store found, because we haven't followed the second step, where we have to basically inform this extension that there is a store in our web app. And for that, we simply need to set up a special variable here, or pass a special enhancer, we should say, to our createStore method. Since we're using a middleware, we have to use the advanced store setup, but it's still pretty simple. Let's copy that strangely named variable here on the window object, the Redux Devtools extension compose thing here. This essentially is a variable which is injected by the Chrome extension into our JavaScript at runtime, so it will be available. Back in our code in the index.js file where we create the store, I will first of all, as instructed here, create a custom constant before we do anything on the store. I'll name it compose enhancers. This will then be our special variable, or in case that can't be found, we'll fall back to a default compose function provided by Redux. We can import it from the Redux package. Now compose is a little bit similar to combine reducers. Combine reducers allows us to combine, well, reducers. Compose allows us to combine enhancers. Apply middleware is only for middlewares. If we have other enhancers, like the store DevTools, we need to use compose to compose a set of enhancers with both the DevTools features and our middleware. So we also add compose here, separated with this or sign, to take this dynamically injected variable if available, but if not, to still have to fall back to the native Redux solution, which of course doesn't give us DevTools support then. So now compose enhancers essentially just holds a function. If we go back to the documentation, we see that now we should create our store and use this new compose enhancers function, which uses either the DevTools function or the natively built-in one, to then pass apply middleware to it. So we'll do that. I will wrap apply middleware in create store with compose enhancers. So with this constant name here, compose enhancers. Wrap apply middleware with it, so pass apply middleware as a function to that. You don't need to pass anything about the DevTools because it will be passed in automatically if that is chosen, so if that is available. So with that we got a setup, where we should be able to connect our browser extension to the store running in our JavaScript code. Let's have a look. Let's go back to the React application, and there you should already see that the Redux view here is filled with life. Here you see all actions which were emitted, like the init action, which happens first. You can shrink this to get a different view on this. And there you see for each action what type this was, or which payload it actually carried, also anything besides type, what the state is at this point of time, how it changed the state, and you can always look into the state therefore with this state button at a given point of time. Now if I dispatch a new action by, for example, subtracting 15, you see it gets added here, and if we click on it, we see what the state is after this action, this state here. You also see the old state if you click on the other action, on the init action. So you see the state at different points of times. You see how the subtract action changed the state. It deducted 15 off the counter. And you see what the action carried. That's pretty useful. Now we can add more and more, and we can always see how we adjusted our state and what our current state is and what our state was in the past. So Redux Devtools are extremely useful, and definitely dive into the documentation I pointed you to learn more about them. Now, one important feature I want to show you is the time traveling. With the Redux Devtools, you can travel through time. So for example, of course, the application we see here reflects the state after all these actions. But if we wanted to rewind and say, yeah, let's go back to that subtract thing here, you can click on subtract and then on jump. And now you see you're back to that point of time where you just subtracted 15. Now the old states are not lost. You can always go back to there by clicking jump on that again. But you can also go back and, for example, skip this to update your state as if you haven't ever dispatched this action. And of course, this can also be reverted. So this is an extremely nice feature, which gives you a lot of debugging possibilities, and especially in more complex apps. This is great to make sure that only actions are dispatched you expected to be dispatched, and to find out why the state is currently in, well, the state it is in.